We're about ready to start. Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to usually we are here on the Shabbat day and on Shabbat night talk. First and foremost, giving glory to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our forefathers. We give glory to the Most High God, and we pray that the Creator will continue to be with each and every one of us, to guide and protect us, to be with us, to keep us on a safe path. As you can see, the stream might not look that perfect, but it's because we're trying something new in order to show the slideshow that my brother, Rabbi Chief Benyamin, is going to present in front of all of us in regards to the Passover, Pesach, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So giving glory to the Creator, continuing to pray for all the people who are right now in the midst of the plague, who are being affected by it, all the people who are being touched by it. We pray for all of you, for all the brothers and sisters, everyone. I know that the video quality is not that great, but if you can hear me clearly, if you can hear us clearly, please give me a 1 in the room. And if the stream is good, please let me know. Give me a 1 in the room if you can hear me clearly. Soon, I'm going to introduce Chief Benyamin. Chief, can you share that screen up there with us, Bavakushai, so that they can see it?
Shalom to everyone. Once again, I'm giving praise and honor to Yehovah God and thanking Him for our life, for strength and good health. And we're going to be talking about Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The slideshow should still be up there. I'm going to take it down, so the screen sharing is still up there. So we'll work it out with everyone. So once again, thank everybody for tuning in and keeping it locked to us, and beautiful that all join together and have discussion.
Chief, can you share the slideshow up there again? Because what I'm seeing really is just me.
Let me stop it and then restart it. Let me see.
Let me see. Let me make sure. You left the meeting, it said. I see you said Benjamin is in this call, but I don't see you sharing the screen.
Yeah, just stop it and share it again.
I need to send you the link again.
Yeah, you can try that.
Oh, I have to join the Hangout. There you go. Now I joined it. There you go. Sorry about that, family. Okay. This is new. Hangout used to be part of YouTube Live, but it's no longer part of YouTube Live, so we had to figure out a way to make it come through YouTube Live. So once again, giving glory to the Most High God, the Creator of heaven and earth. If you could hear us clearly, please give us a 1. Let us know that you're still in the room with us and that you can hear myself and Rabbi Chief Benyamin clearly. And hopefully this goes smooth, all right? And if the stream is good, just let us know and give us a 1. So once again, I like to give glory to the Creator. Thank you, the Most High God, for my life and the life of all of you. Thank you, the Most High God, for the life of Rabbi Chief Benyamin. And Chief Benyamin is a teacher, a scholar, and he takes pride in researching and doing all the things that are necessary in order to get ready for the holy days and for the Shabbat day and for whatever it might be. Whatever he do, he's dedicated and he does extensive research. And at this point and at this time, he's going to go over the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread do's and don'ts. Keeping in mind that on Shabbat night, Friday night, I replayed old video from 2017 that might have given the date for 2017 of when the Passover would come into play. That was an old video. He's gonna do the same presentation, but with things updated and with new dates, obviously. And hopefully we could continue to do this from year to year. So at this time, Rabbi, is your floor.
Yeah, hallelujah. Once again, giving praise to Jehovah God. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about his word and praying for the lives of everyone that is out there listening and praying for everyone's peace during this time. The time, of course, with what's happening in the world overall, just praying that we're all protected and we're all given peace by the Creator, and also given peace and given success in our observance of the holy season that he has commanded us to observe. So we're going to be discussing Pesach, which is Passover, and Chag Matzot, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And this is a season that was given to the children of Israel to keep from generation to generation, primarily the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because there are discussions in terms of whether Passover, whether the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or any of the feasts should be kept outside of the land. And we'll answer those questions. We'll also discuss that as well. But we just want to make sure that all of us are in tune and in line with what the Most High. So this is basically an open discussion because we want everybody to participate. Your questions and your comments to be helpful, because many of us that are listening have been observing this season for many years. And all of us have the capability to read the word of the Most High. We have the capability to obtain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So it's not just based on one of us or two of us. It's based on all of us coming together and gaining that understanding. So we pray that the Most High will enlighten all of us to his truth and give us the ability to be successful once again in keeping the season that is coming in. So once again, we're going to be discussing Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And, we felt it was important to talk about this. Chief Uziel mentioned that the video from 3 years ago, from 2017, was streamed, during the Shabbat night talk. We've been discussing it on the Sabbath day itself. We did it yesterday, we did it 2 weeks ago, because we just want to make sure that all of us are in tune with the season. So just for future reference, just in case, when anybody's rewatching this video, or if this video is streamed again in the future, that just to let everybody know that this now is currently from the Gregorian year 2020 that we're streaming from. And Passover will come in on the Hebrew calendar, of course, it's the 14th day of the first month of the Hebrew calendar being called Abib. And it's going to come, so Passover will come in that, before that evening on the 8th, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread will begin when the sun goes down on the 8th, on April 8th. And that will take us into the 15th day of the Hebrew month, or the 15th day of the Hebrew month Abib. which will correspond also with April 9th. But once again, that evening will begin on April 8th. So from April 8th at evening to April 9th at evening is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a holy day that we are commanded to keep holy. We are commanded that it is a holy convocation. So it is a day that we don't engage in any of our secular activity, but we are allowed to do any work that is necessary for food, not just for necessary for the feast itself, but personally in your own home, any food that you have to prepare for yourself, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, those types, that type of work is permitted on that day. But other than that, it's a holy day, so we have to treat it holy and not engage in our own secular activity or conversations on that day. So we thank the Most High God for teaching us His truth and giving us knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And also this day we'll be discussing, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread requires, we are giving additional laws in terms of how we observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a 7-day feast. The first day being holy, the 7th day being holy, but for 7 days we are given additional laws on how we should conduct ourselves on the things that we are commanded to eat, as well as what we are commanded not to eat during that time. So once again, we do thank Jehovah God. We acknowledge Him as the creator of the heaven and the earth. We acknowledge Him as our Savior and as our King, and understanding that there is none beside Him, and that He has selected the children of Israel to be His people out of all of the peoples on the face of the earth in order to teach His word. He has given us that covenant through our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. So we pray that Jehovah God, be the first and the last, would once again give us the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding necessary in order to conduct ourselves in a proper manner before Him during the season. So once again, just reiterating for those that may be watching the video when it's not live, or if this video is streamed somewhere else or some other date, that we're talking about Passover coming in on April 8th, 2020, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread beginning on sundown on April 8th, 2020 to April 9th, 2020. So we're going to continue on with the presentation and our discussion of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which, as it says, is an appointed season which the children of Israel are commanded to observe every year on the 14th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar at dusk. And we read that in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 5, where it says, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at dusk, is Jehovah's Passover. And this month is called Abib. And for the reference of where the first month of the Hebrew calendar is called Abib, you can find it in Exodus chapter 13, verse 4, Exodus chapter 23, verse 15, Exodus chapter 34, verse 18, and Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. And it is also told that it is the beginning of months for the children of Israel, which we read in the book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. So immediately following the Passover is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which begins on the 15th day of Abib, or the 15th day of the first month of the Hebrew calendar, and it lasts for 7 days, and it concludes on the 21st day of Abib, or the 21st day of the first month of the Hebrew calendar once again. So when we're talking about the dates now, we have to correspond them with the secular calendar so that we will know how to observe it. But overall, the Hebrew calendar is based on a lunar solar calendar, and the beginning of the months begin with a new moon. So once again, for this year, so of course the Hebrew calendar dates won't always correspond with the secular calendar dates every year. So year by year, we always refer to the secular calendar date because that's what we may be more familiar with, as opposed to living our lives just strictly based on the Hebrew calendar. So just once again, just to reiterate, where the first month is called Abib in Exodus chapter 13, verse 4, we are told that this day you go forth in the month Abib. And in Exodus 23:15, you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month Abib. For in it you came out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And Exodus 34, verse 18, you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month Abib. In the month Abib you came out from Egypt. And Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1, observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto Jehovah your God. For in the month of Abib, Jehovah your God brought you forth out of Egypt by night. So that's just a reference where we are told that the first month on the Hebrew calendar is called Abib. And once again, that's the beginning of our months. It is not January, which is on the secular calendar, but we are commanded as the children of Israel to observe Abib as the beginning of our months. But once again, of course, being that we live by a secular calendar, we always have to make sure that we know the dates that correspond with the secular calendar, so we would know how to observe the holy seasons. And we're going to continue on in this
Chief,
discussion.
quick question.
Yes.
Are you going to take questions in between or at the end?
We'll do that.
At the end of your presentation?
Yeah, mainly at the end. I'm not watching the chat. I mean, if you see a question that
Yeah, there is a question here.
Now, if it's related to something that we're already talking about, then...
No, it's not related yet, but it's going to be related to something in the future. So I just wanted to make sure. So AZ Yisrael, make sure that when you when we get to that point in the discussion, that you re-ask your question. The question basically is, I seen a brother say or means fermentation, and all things that ferment must be removed. So I guess when you get to that, if you could remember that and answer it. Just do that.
Yeah.
All right.
People can ask questions in the chat along the way, just in case they may forget later on.
Right.
And, we'll scroll back if possible. But, people, just type their questions. So if they think they're going to forget them later on.
Right.
Or if not, we'll try to do all of the questions at the same time at the end, because some questions may be answered as we go along.
And just for a little bit of information for everyone that's out there, if you want your questions to be highlighted, I know that you guys donate, but a way to have your questions highlighted is by, if you hit the super chat button, you donate something, your question will be highlighted, because it will show me that you donated something. But when I scroll back up, it'll be easier to find your question. Now, I'm not going to disregard anyone's questions, but it'll be easier to find people's questions who have questions if you hit the super chat button. That's the $ button on the bottom of the screen. All right, so that's for everyone out there. Go ahead, Chief.
So as we just read that in the month of Abib is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and we're commanded to eat unleavened bread for those 7 days. So we'll be discussing that shortly. But just focusing on the first month of the Hebrew calendar being called Abib, as opposed to Nisan, which is some Hebrew calendars call that. And some of the months of the Hebrew calendar we see written directly in the Holy Scriptures. But then overall, there are some replacements of names that we received after our Babylonian captivity. Because we basically, most of the nations, they're in that region, which is known as the Middle Eastern region today. Most of the nations in that region basically kept the same calendar. The names of the months were different. But just like you have the Gregorian calendars, observed worldwide. Back in that time, we refer to it as a Hebrew calendar, but it's not something that was specific to us, because when we left out of Egypt, and Jehovah God told us that this was the beginning of months unto us, we already understood the transitions of months. We already understood the calendar that was already in place, or that we were observing in Egypt. It's just that the month that we came out of Egypt now became the beginning of months for us. So a lunar solar calendar was something that was generally observed by many nations at that time. It's just the names of the months for us were given to us. The primary Abib was given to us by Jehovah God, and we see throughout the Holy Scriptures, references to the other names of the months, which may not be the same names that other nations had, but basically everybody knew when the beginning of a month was. So it wasn't something that was specific for us. That's going to, of course, lead it to another discussion, which is beyond this talk today, but just wanted to make that reference, for right now. So, once again, so Abib is the beginning of months, as it says in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So now we're going to go into talking about the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which commemorate the first Passover in Egypt and the subsequent exodus from Egypt. Now, Passover was the night Jehovah God passed over Egypt, slaying all firstborn from man to beast. And the service which is to be held regarding the land, and also we read in the scripture, especially in the first Passover, it was that animal was taken of was either a lamb or a goat. So the service which is to be held regarding the lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs serves as a memorial of the events surrounding the Passover in Egypt. Now, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which follows, is a reminder that the children of Israel left Egypt in haste, insomuch that they were not able to allow their bread to rise, and ate unleavened bread during the initial stages of the Exodus. And Exodus chapters 11 through 13 talk about this series of events. Now, this is a joyous occasion which connects Jehovah God with the children of Israel, and it's a memorial of the birth of the nation, which is why it's important for us to observe the season year by year, because it's given to us as a reminder of what Jehovah God did for the children of Israel. He heard our cries when we were in Egypt. We remember that Egypt to us was that house of bondage. We remember that the oppression, the captivity, all of the harshness and the bitterness that we faced in Egypt. We can relate that to those of us that live in the Americas. Talking about North America, South America, the Caribbean, in the Americas, and the slavery that we endured here in the Americas is basically what we were enduring in Egypt. So we have to remember that Jehovah God brought us out of that house of bondage, with his strong hand, with his outstretched arm. So that's why he commanded us to remember that time year after year. So the Passover, once again, is not a day. It takes place on the 14th day of the first month for the Hebrew calendar, but Passover is not a day. Passover technically is, it's not a day, so it's not a holy day. It's a period of time where we would slaughter a Passover offering. So the Passover is actually talking about the offering that would be slaughtered on the 14th day of the first month. So we're not talking about that too much in the presentation today, but that's really what the Passover is. So because questions may come up or may have come up, and probably will, and most likely will come up in regards to whether we could keep Passover, whether we could keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, whether we could keep any holy days outside of the land of Israel. So now in regards to the holy days, we are supposed to keep the holy days in any land, in all of our dwellings, in all of our generations. That's something that we cannot escape. So what we read in Leviticus chapter 23, when we were given those appointed seasons, those have to be observed in all of our generations, in all of our dwellings. In regards to Passover itself, Passover is once again an offering. So we cannot do offering outside of the land of Israel, or more specifically outside of the place that Jehovah God has chosen for his name to be called, which we know the last place that was to be was the temple or the house that King Solomon built to Jehovah God in Jerusalem. So even if we were in the land of Israel, we cannot keep offerings in all of the land of Israel. It was one specific place that Jehovah God selected for offerings to be presented. So technically, we cannot keep Passover outside of the land of Israel, but it does not stop us from keeping the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread holy. Those are two separate things. One is an offering, and one is an event. Offerings cannot, and all these go for all offerings, cannot be done without the priest out of the line of Aaron, who was Moses' brother, and Aaron himself and his sons were selected by Jehovah God to be the priests for the children of Israel. So without us knowing who those priests are, without us being at the house of God in Jerusalem, without the altar being in place and being cleansed, therefore we cannot perform offerings. So it doesn't mean that technically offerings are not done away with. It's just that offerings just cannot be done. But all of the law of God is in effect. So by us not observing offerings today is us still keeping the law. So technically, that's a different subject. So technically offerings are not done away with. It's just that we cannot perform the offerings because we're not in the location where offerings can be done, and we don't have the people in their positions to perform those offerings. So that's why we constantly have to pray to Jehovah God that He will restore us so that we will be able to keep all of His commandments, statutes, and judgments. Because there are things that are missing, or things that are lacking right now, primarily the offerings that we are supposed to be presenting to Jehovah God, but everything else we are able to keep outside of the land. So now we'll start referring specifically to the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the laws that are specific to that, and this may be where we start to answer some of the questions that are being asked. So with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, there come certain laws, and these laws include no eating of anything leavened. So this is leavened bread, leavened cake, or any leavened baked goods. And we also have to remove leavening from our houses. And we read about that in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 15, and Exodus chapter 12, verses 19 through 20, where it tells us once again that we have to remove leavening from our houses. So now the term leavening, by definition, refers explicitly to bread. So when you look up the word leavening in the dictionary, you will see leavening is in regards to bread, or in regards to the rising or the fermentation of grain products. So what we're going to be talking about are the words, or the Hebrew words, or and chametz. And once again, so this where we begin to answer some of those questions that were asked. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 15 says, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Howbeit the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Then also Exodus chapter 12, verses 19 to 20, 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eats that which is leavened, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a sojourner or one that is born in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall you eat unleavened bread. So now we talk about the Feast of Unleavened Bread and talking about the word Sa'or. So Sa'or means sourdough or yeast. And it could also refer to any agent used to make bread rise. And that word appears in the Holy Scriptures 5 times. Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, Exodus chapter 12, verse 19, Exodus chapter 13, verse 7, Leviticus chapter 2, verse 11, and Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 4. So those are the verses that in the Holy Scriptures that contain the word Sa'or. So now in modern day translations, because you'll see some modern Hebrew dictionaries translate the word Sa'or as fermentation. But fermentation, and we're going to talk about that, cannot be a proper definition for the word Sa'or. Because once again, when we talk about Sa'or, It's actually an ingredient, an ingredient which is added to bread or added to dough in order to make the bread rise. So now you have ancient methods that are used to make bread, and these ancient methods are sourdough. You know, make the sourdough bread. They use barm or they use yeast. So that's why we apply those words to Se'or. And also, part of this presentation, just bearing in mind, we are broadcasting on the channel of Veda Al-Khakma Bina. So we know that there are discrepancies on how various congregations and various communities observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and also, you know, define words such as Se'or and Kamit. So we're just speaking it from the point of reference on how this congregation observes it, and we are mindful of how other congregations and other communities observe it as well. So there are, and we'll talk about that as we go along, there are some things that we do just to dispel or to quell some of those controversies. But overall in the presentation that we're giving, we just want to make sure that we give the exact definitions, the exact meanings on what is supposed to be done. But we do discuss the controversies as well, because we do bear in mind that there are differences on how we observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we keep that in mind in order not to offend or, you know, not to disrupt how anyone else is doing it. So we're just speaking once again from the point of view of this congregation, the Al-Khakma Bina, and how we, you know, read these laws concerning the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So by definition, fermentation, and this is just a general definition of fermentation, is a process in which an agent causes an organic substance to break down into simpler substance, especially the anaerobic breakdown of sugar into alcohol. So that's the definition of fermentation. So being that that's the definition of fermentation, we don't apply fermentation to Se'or, because you can't remove the breakdown of, you know, an organic breakdown of any substance into simpler substances. You know, whether it's the breakdown of sugar to alcohol, you cannot remove that from your houses. You cannot remove that from the land. So that's why we teach that Se'or is not fermentation, and Se'or is specifically sourdough and yeast. So once again, these are the verses, once again, that contain the word Se'or in the Holy Scriptures. Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, howbeit the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses, for whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Exodus chapter 12, verse 19, 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eats that which is leavened, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a sojourner or one that is born in the land. Exodus chapter 13, verse 7, unleavened bread shall be eaten throughout the 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee, neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in all thy borders. Leviticus chapter 2, verse 11, no meal offering which you shall bring unto Jehovah shall be made with leaven, for you shall make no leaven, nor any honey smoke as an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. And Deuteronomy 16, verse 4, there shall be no leaven seen with you in all your borders 7 days, neither shall any of the flesh which you sacrifice the first day at even remain all night until the morning. So where the word leaven is bold and underlined, in the Hebrew translation, that's where the word Se'or is. So if you replace the word leaven there with fermentation, or describe that as fermentation, these would not think, you know, fermentation would not be something that you can remove from your houses or remove from your borders, or something that cannot be seen with you. Or in regards to the offerings or the meal offerings in Leviticus chapter 2, where it says, you shall make no leaven, or nor any honey smoke as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, talking about the leaven, it's not talking about fermentation. It's talking about having that ingredient be placed in the meal offering in order to make it rise when it's baked. So that's why, and you know, hopefully that answers that question in regards to Se'or being whether we consider it as fermentation. You know, once again, this congregation doesn't teach that it refers to fermentation. So in modern day translations, the word fermentation is often used, but does not apply itself in these passages, the passages that we just read. However, ancient methods used to make bread use a sourdough barm and yeast to apply once again. And once again, just given the definition of fermentation and then showing that it cannot apply to what we read. Now we're going to go into the subject of chametz. Now, chametz, by definition, means to be leavened, cool, or red. Now this is as a verb, because you read the word chametz as a noun or as a verb in the Holy Scriptures. And there are many, there are many words that in the Hebrew language that are said in a verb form and also said as a noun. So now, as a verb, once again, it means to be leavened. So it's talking about bread. It also has looser definitions, which means cruel or red, based on the context, and we'll be discussing those as well. Or in terms of the subject, leavened bread. So oil is the actual ingredient that would go into dough, and then when you put so'or, when you put leavening into dough, what you have after you bake it is leavened bread, which is also the Hebrew word chametz. So sometimes you'll see loosely to mean leaven, but it's actually leavened bread. And we're going to go into that as well. But when you read the word chametz as a noun, it appears 11 times. Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. Some of these verses were just said. You'll see the difference in some of these verses that are repeated, where now it's talking about the leavened bread. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, Exodus chapter 13, verse 3, Exodus chapter 13, verse 7, Exodus chapter 23, verse 18, Exodus chapter 34, verse 25, Leviticus chapter 2, verse 11, Leviticus chapter 6, verse 17, Leviticus chapter 7, verse 13, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 17, and Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 3, and Amos chapter 4, verse 5. So those are the 11 times that chametz appears as a noun in the Holy Scriptures. And those are in connection with leavened bread. And when you read in the context, it's talking about leavened bread. And that as a verb is mentioned 8 times. Once again, some of the verses are repeated, whether we just in the paragraph prior or in some of the previous slides. But all of those 8 times, whether it's Exodus or Hosea, they're all in connection with bread. Now, there are 3 other times that the word chametz appears in the Holy Scriptures, and this is in its verb form, but it's in Psalms chapter 71, verse 4, Psalms chapter 73, verse 21, and Isaiah chapter 63, verse 1. And those would be the 3 times that the word chametz appears in the Holy Scriptures, but once again, it's talking about chametz as a verb. And that's when you see the other definitions, whether it's talking about to be cruel or to be red. So, of course, those would not have any connection to bread, but you would have to read it in the context that is given in those verses. So all of the other verses, when it's talking about chametz as a noun, it's talking about leavened bread, or chametz as a verb, it's talking about to leaven bread, more directly. So these are the verses once again. So where the word leavened bread is highlighted, it's highlighted, it's bolded and underlined, that's where you would see the word chametz in those verses. So these are the same verses that were said in the prior slide. And once again, just going back, there were 11 times that it appears as a noun. So these are the verses where the word chametz mentioned as a noun. We'll go through all of them, but just to read once again, because Exodus 12, verse 15, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Howbeit the first day you shall put away leaven. And I remember leaven was highlighted or bolded and underlined prior when it was talking about so'or. So 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Howbeit the first day you shall put away so'or or leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats chametz or leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. So just reading that one, because that was a verse that contained both so'or and chametz, just to show that there's a connection between so'or when it comes to an ingredient that is put into the dough, and chametz, which is the result of the leaven put into dough, which results in leavened bread. So all of these verses, once again, talk about leavened bread. So now we're going to talk about the subject called quitnio. But actually, we'll pause for right now if anybody has the subject of quitnio is going to go into something different. So what we'll do right now is if anybody has any questions
Okay.
in regard to what was just
Okay.
said.
So we got a few questions. We start. All right. Did you answered the one about seor, right? I seen a brother say seor means fermentation, and all things that ferment must be removed. You just explained that fermentation is a natural process that occurs, basically in life. So that's not what it's speaking about. I mean, you could re-explain it if you want to.
If necessary. I mean, if
so you did it already.
Yeah, so if any of the answers were not clear, then people can ask them again for clarity.
Right.
But
so Lucy Bryce, Alicia writes, what is in vinegar that makes it not kosher for Pesach?
So, and I think we're going to end up talking about that in the subject of quitnio.
Okay.
But in terms of our congregation, once again, this is what we teach.
Right.
And I know there are other congregations that teach the same thing. That overall, we do not have a problem with vinegar. Now, let me also say that our congregation does not use vinegar during the Feast of Unleavened Bread because of this controversy. But we cannot teach based on what we read, and that's why our congregation does not teach that vinegar is wrong or not kosher for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But there are congregations, there are communities that believe so, and in order to, once again, not to add further confusion to that particular controversy, and it's only 7 days, we teach the congregation not to use it. But in teaching the law, exactly as it is, vinegar there's nothing wrong with vinegar during that time. But just to be safe, and I know, being safe is a overall problem because sometimes being safe can also be adding to the law. And, we read in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, and also Deuteronomy 13 that we're not supposed to add or take away from, and this is paraphrasing, we're not supposed to add or take away from the commandments of God. So sometimes, we just say things to be safe. It's only, a 7-day feast. So it doesn't hurt us, it doesn't hurt our congregation not to utilize vinegar for those 7 days. But with reading the law and what we're just talking about, we're only talking about the removal of leavened bread or the removal of leavening agents for those 7 days, and vinegar would not be a leavening agent, and it's not the result of a grain product being leavened. You can have vinegar, of course, come from grain, and it's a fermented grain. That goes into a different subject. But vinegar itself is not leavened bread. It's not the same. So if we talk about the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or the commandment to remove leavened bread from our homes, that would not include vinegar. Vinegar goes through an entire different process. The same process as alcohols, and just ask in plural. Alcohols, whether it's, wines, the various types of wines, the various types of rums, the various types of cognac, so various types of alcohols. That is not leavened bread. So that's why we don't teach that that you have to remove those by law. But we teach as a practice of being safe, and because of the controversy, that we do not utilize those products, alcohol products, vinegar as well, during those 7 days.
All right, so my next... So the next question will be, what about wine, liquor, because some of the some people would say some of these things yeast are added to it to augment or to fasten or to make faster the process of fermentation.
Right.
So what will you say about that?
Right. So it's added to the being safe because we don't control how vinegar is made. We don't control how wine is made. We don't control how various alcohols are made. That's why, so along with the controversy, we stay away from it. Because there are individuals and there are companies that would add yeast. So we're not talking about the packaged yeast that you would get, buy in the store to throw it in on a batch of liquid to make it, there's a different process of adding yeast to a liquid in order to make it ferment faster. That would be a wrong process. That the fact that they're adding yeast to those liquids to make those alcohols, that will prohibit those for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But now, if somebody made their own wine without doing that process, if somebody made their own vinegar without doing that process, then that will be okay for the 7 days. But still, that's why our congregation still teaches, just to be safe, we stay away from that. It's only 7 days. But, it's keeping in line with the law. The alcohols are not what the law is talking about in the verses that we read.
And also
again,
go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm basically finished.
No, and also to be clear, we purchase alcohol that has the label kosher for Passover, right? There is alcohol that we do consume, wine for most part, not alcohol, not strong drink. For most part during this time, wine, really can't drink beer because the beer has the hops.
It's made from grain.
Right, and it's made from grain. Right, and it's made from grain. So, and we try to stay away from that. But as far as the wine or the fruit alcohol, I guess you could say, right, and it goes through its natural process, and usually the ones that say kosher for Passover, we purchase and we do consume those. That's for those of you that want to have a glass of wine with your Pesach meal or with your during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Right. Yeah. So just to reiterate what you just said, that beer is today we consider beer alcohol, but beer is not alcohol. But so beer, because it's a fermented grain, is prohibited for the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The process of making beer is different than the process of making wines or any alcohol that's coming from fruit. It's a different process. So the fermented grain products is what we're prohibited from having in our houses and in our borders throughout the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And once again, repeating the dates. Of course, that's the 15th day to the 21st day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar, which corresponds to the evening of April 8th. So now we talk about the entire 7-day feast, beginning on the evening of April 8th, going until the evening of April 15th. That will correspond for this year, for 2020. That will correspond to the 15th day of Abib to the 21st day of Abib, which would encompass the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So once again, not to belabor the point on the vinegar, but we don't teach that vinegar is wrong, but it's a controversy amongst some congregations in regards to vinegar. So we bear that in mind, and we don't our congregation does not utilize vinegar. And also to add to that, because we don't know the process, if you're just buying vinegar, and that's what the problem would be, and that's why, like Chief Williams just mentioned, in terms of wine and other alcohols, those that drink wine and alcohol during the 7 days, they'll buy the wine and alcohol that says kosher for Passover, because what they say is that the process used to make those alcohols do not involve the introduction of yeast in making it, in order to make it ferment faster. They use a natural process of having those the fruit juices ferment So without the introduction of yeast, then it would be okay. So you have to, be careful of the labels. I'm going to be getting into reading labels in the presentation as well. At the same time, we just want to try to condense some things because, of course, if the video is too long, a lot of people are not going to sit down and, those of us that are going through it now, we able to listen to now, but at the same time, those that will go back and watch it later, we want to make sure that we condense a lot of the information so that things don't get lost. So, just pausing right now for the questions that are in regard to the subject, because that's where, a lot of the controversies come in, and we want to let people know where our stance is, because sometimes people see or hear about our stance as a congregation, and they may disagree with it, but we want to explain to people why we teach the way that we teach. It's not just one person at the congregation teaching it one way, or two people at the congregation teaching it this way. There's a collective body of people at the congregation, and this is something that been studied for years and agreed upon, that this is the stance that we take. But at the same time, to be careful, as we just stated, we stay away from certain things. Now we're going to get into, I don't know if there's any other questions on this subject.
Someone just really asks, what is a typical meal I can serve to my family for Passover, the first night, or for during the 7 days, I guess. We usually eat lamb. If you eat meat, you got to have some bitter herbs, endive. Some people choose to eat horseradish, and I said, and unleavened bread. And I guess you're going to get into the other things now that we could eat, that some people, this is the other part of controversy that with the quitniot, so I guess you could get into that now.
Okay. So quitniot. So now, because there's another controversy that comes up with the Feast of Unleavened Bread on things that some communities or some congregations do not eat. So now we're going to talk about the subject of quitniot. Now, in discussing these controversies or discussing these things, people may not use this word. But now we're going to go into the history of those grains, which are pictured in the slide, where it says, what is quitniot? And these are specific grains, or this is specific legumes that people say or teach are prohibited for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, but it's quitniot. So, and this is going to go beyond the scope of what we were speaking about just now in terms of the law, but this is also going to help to explain for those that may hear from different people why there are additional prohibitions on during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So on its own, and this is the answer for quitniot, on its own, quitniot is a Hebrew word which just means little things. That's just it's in the slide as well, but just mention that now before we continue. Quitniot is basically a Hebrew word for little things. So on its own, this rule requires fairly extensive effort to observe, but it is at least quite clear. So for the past 700 years, however, Ashkenazic Jews have complicated Passover observance by avoiding rice, millet, and legumes. Now, these are collectively known as quitniot. This comes from the Hebrew word quatan, which means little. So what's in your quitniot means little things. So in recent years, the discovery of the New World food quinoa, which most Jews now consider have kosher for Passover, has eased the quitniot burden somewhat. So because the quitniot discussion is basically something that appeared amongst Ashkenazic Jews. Now we talk about, once again, beyond what we were just speaking about with Torah, and now we're talking about what Jewish people observe in their Judaic or halakhic practices. And this, in brief, there are two major sects. There are others, but there are two major sects of Jewish people in the world. You have the Ashkenazic Jews and you have the Sephardic Jews. You have others that are different than Ashkenazic or Sephardic, but those are the two primary ones. I mean, you also have the Mizrahi once again. You have other ones as well, but now the Ashkenazi Jews are primarily those from or that originate from Eastern Europe, which is where the term Ashkenaz comes from. Coming from German, we know that Ashkenaz is a son of Japhet in the book of Genesis, chapter 10. So when we talk about Ashkenazi Jews, we're talking about those that whose practices or whose halakha or whose traditions originate from Eastern Europe. And they are the ones that, once again, complicated the observance of Passover or the observance of Feast of Unleavened Bread by avoiding rice, millet, and legumes. That was a practice that they observed. This is not something that is related to Torah at all. And the link for the reference for that is on the slide. And to note, the Conservative Movement Committee on Jewish Law and Standards ruled in December 2015 that Crete meals are now permitted on Passover. So amongst the conservative movement is a subdivision of Ashkenazi Jews. Now, the Ashkenazi Jews, once again, are a sect of broader Judaism. And then within the Ashkenazi Jews, they have separate sects. You have the Orthodox, you have the conservative, you have Reform, you have redactive, you have reconstructive. Sorry, you have the reconstructionist. So those are some of the subdivisions. So the conservative movement of the Ashkenazi Jewish movement have now said it's okay to eat Crete meal for Passover, but bearing in mind that for the past 700 years, the Ashkenazi Jews overall were not eating Crete meal. So now, still the subject of Crete meal. The medieval Jewish sages placed a ban on eating legumes, Crete meal, on Passover because they are similar in texture to chametz. Even bread can be made out of their flour. So because you can make sort of like a rice bread, or you can grind the legumes and make flour into it, that's why they added the restriction. Once again, it was Jewish sages that added that ban or made that ban on legumes for Passover, simply because its texture was similar to chametz. And that's because bread can be made from the flour. So people might assume that if, for example, cornbread can be eaten on Passover, wheat or rye bread can be eaten too. So this prohibition includes rice, beans, and corn. Now, this injunction was unanimously accepted by Ashkenazi Jews. Many Sephardic Jews, however, continue to eat Crete meal on Passover. So amongst the Sephardic Jews over these past 700 years, that was never an issue of rice and beans and all of those, any legumes during Passover. So if you're a Sephardic, and this is once again, this is from this reference, if you're a Sephardic, however, continue to eat Crete meal. So if you're a Sephardic, speak to your rabbi to determine your family and community tradition. Now, the prohibition is only with regard to consumption of Crete meal. There is no obligation, however, to destroy or sell Crete meal products before Passover. So, in regards to how the Ashkenazi Jews observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when it comes to rice, beans, they don't remove that from their house. They just don't utilize it during the 7 days. So now, what is going to be said now is also going to be a controversy. So we're going to relate to the topic of vinegar. Vinegar is not, once again, chametz. Vinegar is not leavened bread. So therefore, this congregation does not teach that it's a prohibition to utilize vinegar. But we teach just because of the controversy that you should not use it. So therefore, we also teach that because in your cleaning for Passover, if you have an abundance of product that has vinegar in it, or an abundance of product or abundance of vinegar, period, we're not going to tell you to throw all of that vinegar out, because the Lord doesn't tell you to get rid of the vinegar; it tells you to get rid of the unleavened bread. However, once again, just to be specific, because to be safe, we'll just tell you don't use it for the 7 days, but we're not telling you to get rid of it before those 7 days. And hopefully that is clear so people can understand that. It may sound contradictory, but if you're listening, it's not contradictory, because we just want to be fair to the law as well. We're being fair to the controversy that exists in the community, but we also have to be fair to the law. So going back to the Crete, just like how among Jewish people, Quitniot is a controversy for them. They understand that Quitniot is not comic. They just don't utilize it for the 7 days. But they don't get rid of it for the 7 days because they understand that Quitniot is not comic. It's just that they feel that people may get confused if they see flour made from the grain that you can use as opposed to flour made from the Quitniot, and then they make a mistake. So they just tell people, stay away from the Quitniot. So once again, I know that question may come up because it sounds contradictory, but, we just want to be fair to Torah just as we're being fair to tradition. Because we have to just teach the Torah, teach the law the way that it's supposed to be taught. So that chametz is defined as any of the 5 grains. And I know this is a question that comes up a lot in terms of the 5 grains that we can use. So for making your unleavened bread for the 7 days, you can use these 5 grains: wheat, spelt, barley, oats, and rye. These grains are completely permissible for the Feast of Unleavened Bread because these are the grains that naturally grow from the ground. These are the grains that grew or were indigenous to the land of Israel when we went into the land of Egypt where we came out of. So these are the grains that can be used for making unleavened bread. There's nothing wrong with any of these 5 grains for making bread, for the 7 days. So now, chametz is defined. This is a definition that comes from Judaism. So this is not something that we necessarily teach. I'm just talking about the overall definition of what they say chametz is. And once again, this is under the discussion of Quitniot. So chametz is defined as any of 5 grains: wheat, spelt, barley, oats, and rye, which have come into contact with water for more than 18 minutes. This is a serious Torah prohibition, and for that reason, we take extra protective measures on Passover to prevent any mistakes. So once again, this is a Judaic definition. This is not a Torah definition. So that's why you'll hear amongst for halakha or in Judaism that when they're making dough, it has to be less than 18 minutes from when that grain touches the water to become the flour to when they begin the baking or frying process. The Torah doesn't teach that. It teaches that we're not supposed to let the bread rise, and that's a longer process. Not saying that you should leave dough out there all day. Definitely don't do that. But we're not telling you that it's an 18-minute process for dough to become oil or leavening. So which brings us to the category of prohibited Passover foods called Quitniot, sometimes referred to generically as legumes. This includes rice, corn, soybeans, string beans, peas, lentils, mustard, sesame seeds, and poppy seeds. But once again, these are things that Ashkenazi Jews prohibit during Passover, or prohibit during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But this is not, once again, we read the laws earlier, or we read the commandments line by line in Exodus, and in other verses, in other chapters, of course, but specifically in Exodus in regards to leavening and leavened bread, and what they teach, Ashkenazi Jews teach, and what the Torah teaches are 2 different things. So that's why we don't say that you have to get rid of rice, corn, soybeans, string beans, peas, lentils, mustard, and sesame seeds, and poppy seeds. Those are when they talk about the mustard, they talk about the mustard seeds, not the mustard itself. Because if you're making mustard, you're going to have vinegar, and once again, any vinegar products we do teach, you leave that alone for the 7 days. So even though Quitniot cannot technically become chametz, Ashkenazi Jews do not eat them on Passover. So why? The Samak, who is the Rabbi Yitzchak of Korbel, explains that products of Quitniot appear like chametz products. For example, it can be hard to distinguish between rice flour Quitniot and wheat flour chametz. Therefore, to prevent confusion, all Quitniot was prohibited. And you see who is the one that made the prohibition. That wasn't a prohibition given to us by Yehovah God. That was a prohibition that was given by Ashkenazi Jews, which is a conflict with what we read and what we read in the Torah. So now, this is more definitions and more explanations from the Ashkenazi community on Quitniot. So the Beit Yosef, who's Rabbi Yosef Karo of 16th century Israel, notes that since regular grains may become mixed together with wheat meal, apparently due to changes in crop cycles, one may inadvertently come to eat actual kameh. So once again, they prohibited wheat meal because they felt somebody could make a mistake between the two. So in Jewish law, there is one important, and once again, this is Jewish law. There is one important distinction between kameh and wheat meal. So during Passover, it is forbidden to even have kameh in one's possession. That's what we read in Torah. So that sentence we know from Torah. But during, once again, these are just the references on the bottom, but we're actually talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, in Judaism, they call the Feast of Unleavened Bread Passover. So they say 7 days of Passover. Or if they're outside the land, they say 8 days of Passover. So in Torah, there's only 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Passover is the offering that is slaughtered on the 14th day of that first month in the Hebrew calendar before the 15 days and comes in. But once again, these are just copy definitions. So when you see Passover in these definitions, they are referring to the entire Feast of Unleavened Bread. They call the Feast of Unleavened Bread Passover overall. But once again, there's a distinction between the two. So during Passover, it is forbidden to even have chametz in one's possession, hence the custom of selling chametz. Selling chametz is a practice that Jewish people do. If the question comes up about that, we'll give the explanation on that. So, on the other hand, it is permitted to own wheat meal during Passover and even to use it, not for eating, but for things like baby powder, which contains cornstarch. So similarly, someone who is sick is allowed to take medicine containing wheat meal. Once again, these are their definitions. So interestingly, the Sephardi Jewish community never adopted the prohibition against wheat meal. Now, the Sephardic community comes primarily from Northern Africa and the Middle East, where the Ashkenazi community comes from Eastern Europe. So this creates the strange situation, for example, where a Sephardi family could be eating rice on Passover, whereas their Ashkenazi neighbors will not. Once again, this is a passage, and that's the reference on the website for that reference. So that's why amongst Jewish people, they had that controversy on what can and cannot be eaten on Passover. That actually filtered into the Israelite community. It filtered into the Israelite community from the Israelites that live in a predominantly Ashkenazi society. So whereas in northeast of the United States, you may have more Ashkenazi Jewish people living or having communities based and being the Israelites that learned about this way of life around Ashkenazi Jews. That's how their customs filtered into the Israelite community. There's one thing that we have to bear in mind, that there's always thing being said about what Israelites do versus what Jewish people do, but we don't realize that there are a lot of things that Israelites do because of what Jewish people do, because of our proximity to living with them. Wheat meal is one of those practices that we adopted from them. It's not, once again, they understand it's not Torah. Torah doesn't talk about wheat meal or these specific things being or prohibition, but because of our proximity to Ashkenazi Jews, that practice filtered into the Israelite community. We didn't get that from Torah. We got that from living around Ashkenazi Jews. But if, on the other hand, you have Israelites that grew up around predominantly Sephardic communities, the issue of wheat meal or the rice and legumes wouldn't be an issue. So now going back to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So based on Jehovah God's law and the state of modern processes, the Akakma Rubina teaches his members to eat only fresh foods and ground foods during the season. So now the beginning of the presentation talked about what the law says, but now we talk about a broader protection or safe zone for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's only 7 days. So as a precaution, canned foods, cheese, because we don't control how the cheese is made. If you make your own cheese, nobody should be able to tell you that cheese is wrong for Passover. Vinegar that you buy at the store, or vinegar containing products, we teach that as well as pastas and other flour products are left alone. However, as we spoke about earlier, if you make your own wine, you make your own alcohols without the introduction of yeast, if you make your own vinegar without the introduction of yeast, those are not prohibited for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But as a precaution, because we primarily buy a lot of our food outside, we outsource, as a community, we outsource our food. So to protect ourselves for the 7 days, because it's a short period of time, we don't want to sin against God in a short period of time. So it's easier for us to stay away from canned food, cheese, vinegar-containing products, pastas, and other flour products during the time. And then the next slide is going to give us a list of ingredients. Now, the list of ingredients, so this slide is talking about the precautions. The next slide is talking about things that we should absolutely remove from our homes for 7 days. These are not things that we are going to teach that you can keep in your home for 7 days. These are things that you absolutely have to remove from your home for the 7 days, because these would be in direct violation of Torah. So a lot of these things are repeated. Many of these ingredients you won't see in a lot of products, but these are the ingredients that you have to look for in your grain products, but not only in products that you eat, but also products that you use. So you're talking about soap, you're talking about toothpaste, you talk about deodorant, you talk about lotion, any product that you would use, any product that you would eat. These ingredients have to be removed from your home before, for the year 2020, before sundown on April 8th. So once again, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread will begin, or the 15th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar will begin on April 8th at evening. So these ingredients on this list right here that you're watching right now have to be removed from your home. And it's not as difficult as it seems. It's a long list, but it's not as difficult as it seems. It's a lot of scientific names, but it's mainly yeast, baking soda, baking powder, balm. Those are the things that we remove from our homes during this time. Cornstarch, not because corn is prohibited during the 7 days, which is not prohibited during the 7 days, because of the processes used to make cornstarch. That would be the problem. Gluten, once again, gluten as an ingredient. Not you find gluten naturally in grain products, but if you talk about just buying gluten in the store, because there's a process used to make that gluten shelf sustainable, then gluten, you don't bring the gluten or a product containing gluten into your home. We know that gluten, once again, is a naturally occurring product or naturally occurring substance. But if you talk about purchasing gluten, there's a difference. If you're purchasing gluten, there's a shelf-sustainable gluten that a process was used to make it shelf-sustainable. That's why that has to be removed. And once again, all of these are basically some of the same or similar ingredients. So these are what you remove from your homes. Once again, in your soaps, your toothpaste, your deodorants, lotion, things like that. You look at the ingredients for everything. You're also going to be mindful of vitamins and medicines as well, because definitely, vitamins, some of them do contain yeast. So you have to make sure that you don't have any medicines that have yeast in it for the 7 days. So that's what we teach at the congregation. Once again, we teach an overall broad stance on it, teaching the Torah or teaching the actual law as God gives it, and also bearing in mind the controversies and to respect the controversies. That's what we teach it. So as mentioned before, this is a joy season, and even during the time that we're in now with the pandemic of the world, we still have to understand that this is a joy season, and we have to focus our attention on the season and not allow what's happening. The news is going to distract us. A lot of things are distracting us, but we cannot be distracted from the season that is upon us, because it's supposed to be a joyous season. It's supposed to be something that we memorialize, because this is a great event that happened in our history. So it's a joyous season, which it should not be difficult to comply with. So that's why we don't teach us the throwing away of all things. This is the time where you start to clean your house, physically clean your house, and also start reading the ingredients of products that are already in your home, start utilizing them, or start putting them in a place where you can throw them out before the Feast of Unleavened Bread comes in. So overall, the Feast of Unleavened Bread merely prohibits the eating of leavened bread. That's the basis of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. the other expansions will come through controversies and comes from where we live and the fact that we don't control our food, we outsource our food. So that's why a lot of the controversies come into play. But overall, the Feast of Unleavened Bread is not something that's difficult. It's not something that Jehovah God would want us to have a strain or stress in keeping. We're supposed to enjoy the season. It's not supposed to be a relief at the end of it in terms of what we can eat after. Because that relief in what we can eat after it's done is because we put so many restrictions on us that causes us not to enjoy the season. If we kept it the way it's supposed to be kept, we'll be able to enjoy the season, and it will be a smooth transition going in and a smooth transition going out. And that's not something that causes children to also not want to observe it. We put more stress on ourselves than we need to. And that's the problem that we have when we keep these days. But these days are supposed to be joyous. We're supposed to enjoy them. And the way that we eat, the only real difference is that we're not supposed to eat leavened bread. That's the main difference. But some of the other things come in, as we read, because of external influence and the stress that we put on ourselves. So we do thank our God for giving us knowledge of the season and praying that He would continue to be with us and teach us so that we would enjoy the season as it comes in. During this time, many of us may or would not be able to keep it together, but we still have to enjoy it nonetheless and make the most out of it and do the best that we can in observing it, keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread, observing Passover, and making sure that we're in compliance with what our God has taught us. So we do thank Jehovah God for teaching us, and we pray that He would enlighten us. And once again, this is an open discussion. This is not just about us answering questions. It's just to put things like we know more than everybody else. So this is a learning process for all of us. So,
Thank you, Chief Benjamin.
Questions now we can.
I'll start asking you some of these questions
out there.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chief Benjamin? Chief, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, so let me see if I could go back to some of these questions that they were asking. I mean, one of the questions is about vinegar. You answered that. Kane told her for clarity. Eggs are used to leaven. Are we supposed to avoid mixing it with grain flour?
Eggs is not a leavening agent. Eggs is that is also another controversy, but eggs is not a leavening agent. Adding eggs to flour does not leaven it technically. There are things. There's leavening agents. There's anti-caking agents. There are thickening agents. There are different things that are related to the baking process. So when we talk about leaven, we talk about loosely the rising, but not just the physical rising, but the rising of a grain product to make it leavened bread. Eggs would not be, once again, a leavening. Eggs is not a leavening agent. So there would not be by Torah law, or by Torah, the instruction was given in Torah, of adding eggs to grain.
Okay.
So the basic or the baseline definition is sourdough yeast and barm. That's the baseline for Seor. That's the baseline of the things that we're supposed to remove. We're commanded to remove Seor from our houses and borders so that we would not be able to make leavened bread. So once you remove sourdough, yeast, and barm from your house and from your borders, it will keep us safe. That's why those verses flow. When you just think of Seor as just specifically the sourdough, barm, and yeast, that will be used to make leavened bread. So once you remove the Seor, you cannot have leavened bread because that's what will cause it to be cut off once we eat it. So eggs we cannot stop production of. Birds lay their eggs. That's not something that we can remove from our borders. That's something that naturally occurring, and it's not in connection with sport.
So, like, just for reference, in our congregation, we got sisters that make unleavened cakes. All they do is remove the baking powder. Things like baking powder, baking soda, we eliminate. Obviously, yeast, but you can make unleavened cakes. They make it with eggs or the other ingredients. People make brownies. Certain ingredients certain ingredients do not call for a leavening agent. I hope y'all understand me. And as far as drinks, besides you drinking alcohol, like a wine, right, which we will advise you mostly to stick with, that says kosher for Passover, lemonade, 100% juices, water, those are things that we drink. Like Chief Benjamin said, like the rabbi said, that is not a time that we're supposed to be looking forward for the time to be over so that we can eat what we want. It's a period of time where the Most High God just told the children of Israel that because we did not have time for the dough, right, to rise, that we had to eat unleavened bread for seven days. And that's basically the what he was trying to bring across. So don't get caught up in everything. Whatever he told you, whatever he put out there, there's certain precautions that we take with certain things, but we could still drink, juices. We stick to 100% juices. Orange juice, you got apple juice, you got grape juice, things like that are 100%, where there is no nothing added to it and all these preservatives and stuff like that. And that's basically it. And you'll be safe. You'll be safe. You could go back to making some lemonade. A lot of people tend to do that. They make lemonades, fresh squeezed lemons with some sugar, some honey, however they do it. Iced tea. People make iced tea with tea bags. Whatever it is. But there's also juices at the store that are 100% juices that you could go out and purchase and not have to kill yourself over what is it that you could drink and not drink and consume. Let me see. Let me go down. Shalom, Rabbi Benjamin and Chief Uziel. My question is, since we are living in modern times, can we leave our Chametz products closed up in the kitchen cabinets and stored in the garage until after Chag?
So, I'll reiterate, because that part was asked while we were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to remove Chametz from our houses. So that's why, towards the end of the presentation, that list, if you look at that list, it seems like a long list, but overall, those are things that are just easy to throw out. But also, if I know we're a few days shy of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but if we had did this presentation sooner, where we did speak about it on Shabbat 2 weeks ago, and this is something that those that may not be new to this way of life, it's almost embedded within us to do it. So the preparations are made, but we have to remove Chametz from our homes, and none of us, nobody should be teaching that you can keep Chametz in your house. So keep leavened bread or leavening agents in your house or in your borders or anything that you own for the 7 days.
That's how mistakes happen.
Yeah. So it's trying to say that as firmly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That because we know that there are people that teach that you can put stuff in a garage or put stuff in a closet or put stuff in a cupboard and tape it up and stuff like that. The command is specific. We have to remove Chametz from our homes, and we don't want to do anything that violates the laws of God in any way. But to go beyond what the question is saying, those things come into play when people say Chametz is what Chametz isn't. That's where the problem comes in terms of not being able to throw away stuff, because if you add to what Kame is, then it makes it seem like it's something difficult to do. If it's just a matter of throwing out a box of baking powder, that's simple. If you add like the Quitney oat, then which we spoke about, then it would be very difficult to do all of that, and that's when people start to make rules on top of the rules that they already made. If people understand what was just said, but if it's kept simple in terms of just removing leavened bread, there would be nothing to hide, because you wouldn't want to hide leavened bread for 7 days and eat it afterwards anyway. So comments has to be removed. But yeah, just trying to say that as firmly as possible without sounding condescending at the same time. But just trying to say that firm because the law is straightforward in terms of us removing comments from our homes.
All right. I'm going to ask this next question. I think you answered it with the topic of Quitney oat. Some people say that rice swells up. Is rice all right to eat? Rice is perfectly all right to eat.
Yeah, right. So the answer is yes. The rice is okay to eat. The people that say it's not okay would be the Ashkenazi Jews, and we're not Ashkenazi Jews. And once again, it's because we live around, for those, well, not probably not everybody in the chat or everybody that's listening now will be listening, doesn't, but I mean, with the resurgence of our awakening as the children of Israel, we woke up, God woke us up, and we were around communities primarily of Ashkenazi Jews, so we picked up a lot of their practices. So they prohibited rice, so we ended up taking that into our communities when that's not something that we were supposed to take into our communities.
Let me see. It's okay. So what about the peas and the beans? What about those? Are we allowed to have those? Yes. We could have legumes and peas and things of that nature. I'm just going through the questions right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shavua Tov, good week ahead. Y'all will. Every day glad. All right. And the other community said a few years ago that quinoa is now kosher or Pesach. Can we use quinoa also?
Right. Yeah, we can use that. And that was in the presentation because quinoa was not something that was familiar to Ashkenazi Jews. But what started to relax their rules on the quinoa is when they were introduced to quinoa. So that's where that came into play. But when it was introduced, as the question was just said, it was mentioned that it's okay for you to use for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So it is something that it's a grain that we can use.
All right. All right. To eat Itia Yasharal. We and I'm gonna just say this: we do not subscribe to the Christ of the New Testament. So us washing our feet on Pesach, we don't follow that. That's not the rules of God. Now we wash ourselves, Hopefully everybody washes themselves. But as far as washing your feet, we don't follow that in any of our congregations. That we serve the one true and living God, Yehovah Zebaot. So I hope that answers your question. No, we do not follow what the Christ of the New Testament says. As Selena Patrick said, just the unleavened bread, no feet wash. All right, here we go. I'm trying to find the question. maybe you want to answer this one. From the same person. Also for Passover, do we know the Messiah is the Passover and what he did in Sheol, which was prophesied in the Psalms, Gospel, Ephesians, Book of Nicodemus, etc.? You want to answer that?
Okay, so in terms of the answer for that, just not to confuse this presentation, we don't. So to backtrack, we're not going to avoid the question, but being that we're going to keep this discussion to specifically Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we don't want to veer off on that discussion now. So if you have a way to directly contact them, so we could actually have. I mean, we could whether we do a live discussion or a pre-recorded discussion or something on that, we can do that. So we're not going to avoid the question, but when it comes to questions about anything messianic, just not to confuse this presentation and cause the direction of the talk to go somewhere, and to where we have to try to reel it back.
Right. So the person that
see if you can get their contact information, or we'll just give them our contact information, and if we set up another stream or something separate, or just a private conversation or whatever, that way we can do that. So this presentation, when people go back to it, it's focused on one
thing. So to Itia Yasharal, in this stream, we do not subscribe to the Christ or the Messiah that you're speaking of in the New Testament. This is why you're not hearing any discussions of him or anything that has to do with him in this discussion, or anything that he commanded to do on the Passover. So I hope that was as simple as I could put it. All right. It's not the wrong channel that you're on, because we're teaching you about the Passover, the correct way to do the Passover, but we do not subscribe to his teachings or to his understanding whatsoever. All right. So I hope that you don't take that too hard, and that you won't leave, and that you at least will stay here and listen to the instructions of the Pesach.
And give us another opportunity or another venue to where we can discuss that.
Right. So can you have coffee on Passover?
I would say yes. Because it's from the coffee bean, just fresh coffee.
Yeah, I actually could speak on this.
Okay.
Because I went to a coffee farm, so I see the process of coffee. So the coffee bean comes from a fruit, almost like a sappy fruit. You can eat it, and it's sweet. And what happens is it goes through a process. There's different processes of coffee production. One process is they leave the coffee whole with the sap and the fruity part in it, and they let it dry. And when that dries out, it's like one grade of coffee. Then they have another process where they take the skin off and they leave just the sap on. That's another grade of coffee. Then they have another process where they take everything off, the skin, the sap, and everything, and they wash it, and then they dry it out, and that's another process, another grade of coffee. So when you look at the natural progression of coffee making, right, or how they do the beans, it has nothing to do with any kind of process that goes through anything. Now, if you're getting instant coffee is, the process is a little bit different, because from what I found out with instant coffee, when I went to this coffee farm, that you could be getting worms, you could be getting all types of stuff in instant coffee, right? Although it comes from the coffee grain, but they grind up everything in it, and they don't. The process with instant coffee, it's a little bit less of a caring process. Let's put it like that. But when you get the coffee beans yourself, even if you get them roasted, Or if you roast them at a store, they got specialty coffee shops, or you get your own coffee beans and you grind them yourself, you're perfectly fine with that. Do you know which toothpaste is kosher for Passover?
Yeah, so that would be, so the answer would be started. Just focus on the list. I know it's going to be, it may be a link available on the stream after it's closed. Also posted on the DCB website, or you can contact us directly. I know Chief Uziel is going to give the information at the end, phone number.
Are you talking about the list of that paper that you give out?
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to do to everyone is when this stream is over, in fact, I'm going to try to do it right now. So once Chief Benjamin, before we get off, you could refresh your stream, and hopefully it's going to be a link for a Google Drive, link, so that you could download the actual paper that I'm about ready to put up. So, Chief, if you can just entertain them for a second so that I can look that thing up.
Yeah, so in terms of any toothpaste or any ingredients, we don't want to say any specific companies without first saying that check the ingredients first, because we can name companies, but with everything, they may have products that contain like baking soda. So basically, you want to shop for toothpaste that doesn't contain any of the ingredients that will be on the list. I'll actually, in the meantime, people should be able to see it, see the list of ingredients. So these list of ingredients are things that we have to definitely avoid during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So there are companies such as Tom's of Maine, which is a company that you can find their products almost anywhere, but you still have to read the ingredients. So that's why first, to answer that question, saying read the ingredients first. So it's not as easy to just give company names for products, because you would still have to read the ingredients. So we just want to reiterate that those list ingredients should be on the screen right now. Those are the list of ingredients that you have to definitely avoid during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is coming up. So once again, the list may seem kind of long, but it's definitely something that's easy to do. So even from now, start looking through your shelves, looking through your cupboards, looking under the sink, looking on your dresser table, whatever products that you use, whether they're edible products or not, make sure that those ingredients are not in there, and you will be safe for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I know it's not a complete answer to that question, but we try to avoid just specifying certain companies, because you would still have to read the ingredients anyway.
Also, there's Dr. Bronner's has a peppermint soap that we've been using for years. I believe it's Dr. Bronner's, and there's another company, basically, where they have these natural soaps, liquid soaps, and also the bar soaps that we tend to use for during this time. But there's other companies out there, but those are companies that we've been sticking for years with when it comes to soaps and brushing your teeth. I believe it's Dr. Bronner's. You could correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Benjamin.
I know they make the peppermint soap. I'm not sure what other products they make besides the peppermint soap, but I know
they make like lavender. They make like a lavender soap. It's a bunch of different, but their soaps are natural. So you might want to check that out if you want to go that way.
And then overall, we're keeping on the laws of Yehovah, that consistency is definitely the key. We don't need to get exotic So if you're used to using something, because once again, it's only 7 days, if you're used to using a certain product or a certain line of products, just stick to it. We don't have to um, get exotic and start looking for different things or different way, even with the food and food that we cook. Try to keep it as simple as possible. You know, don't go into the season if you haven't practiced making something. Just keep it simple during the time, and then afterwards, if you want to practice um, making certain things. I know some of these are questions that were asked outside of the chat, like stuff such as roti, um, and I believe you have roti, you have I forgot the name, other flatbreads that are available. This is the season where you want to make your own bread. You definitely don't want to start going to a restaurant and buying
Right.
any bread products. You know, Roti technically is fine, but you don't know if you go buy roti from a restaurant, you don't know how long that dough is sitting there before they made it turn it into roti. Or you don't even know even though it's flat, you don't know if they sprinkle because to make it flaky or to make it soft, they throw a little something in there, whether it's yeast or baking on powder. Some restaurants may throw that in there, even though that's not the original ingredient of roti. But or some of the like pita breads and stuff like that. Just because the bread is flat doesn't mean that it's okay to have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you want to make sure that you make your own. This is the time. I mean, I know even we go out there, we buy the box matzo, and overall nothing wrong with that. When you read the ingredients, and you have going back to that, matzo is the Hebrew word for unleavened bread. Now, just because you go to a kosher place and buy matzo, you still have to read the ingredients. That's why with the other question, we didn't want to throw just names of companies out there because you still have to read the ingredients. You'll buy a box of matzo and they'll have ingredients such as baking soda, yeast and stuff in there. So that they'll make a line of matzo that's kosher for Passover and a line of matzo that is kosher year round. So therefore, it would be confusing for us because we're not privy to some of, once again, this is going into us outsourcing our food and depending on the Jewish community for certain things. We can't blindly just go to their communities, the Jewish communities, and just buy stuff because they do things that are still not quote unquote kosher for Passover, which is basically prohibited for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you'll find matzo, which is by Hebrew definition unleavened bread, which actually contains leavening in it. But because it's flat, and because it has the same texture as the matzo that they make for Passover, then they'll still call it matzo. But it will still be prohibited for us for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we definitely have to be careful. So this is the time of year for all of us to learn how to make our own unleavened bread or to make our own matzo. So roti may be flat bread, pita may be flat bread, but you don't want to go to a store and buy it, and you don't want to go to a restaurant and buy it. You want to stay to making it your own or buying it from people that you trust.
That's right. So I'm still looking for this. Still trying to load up this document. If anything, at the end of the stream, I will put it up and make sure everybody come back and because my computer's moving like really, 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 really slow right now. So I don't know why that is. Let me see. Last questions. Since we are in the middle of this pandemic and the shelves are almost bare in some stores, we have been buying organic canned food goods like black beans and chickpeas. Can they stay in the garage?
So the organic black beans and chickpeas can actually stay in your house. There's nothing wrong with that for Passover at all. Now, as long as the can, we know that preservatives are put in canned goods, but most of the preservatives that are put in canned goods are not a prohibition for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. In the presentation, we just, as a precaution, we don't utilize canned goods during that time, but the canned goods themselves are not prohibited for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So yeah, you can store it, especially of course, those at this time that we should always be trying to store food anyway. So our preparation should be for times like this. So stuff foods that can be stored and kept, we should still store them and keep them. So that's why we're explaining that the Feast of Unleavened Bread is not difficult to keep, because it's not that when that time comes, you gotta start throwing stuff out your house or thinking that you have to hide something from God, because those things are not the prohibition. So those canned beans or whatever, rice and the grains that people may store up during this time, those are allowable and permissible for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So whether it's in your house or in the garage or something like that, there will be, no problem with that. And, overall, for preparation for times like this, we encourage people to stock up on food and supplies.
All right. Brother writes, my matzos that I brought had unbleached, unbromated Passover wheat flour. Wheat. Should I avoid it? Can y'all post a vid making matzahs? Your matzahs are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The ones that you bought. Ze'ev. Sister writes, Shalom, shalom. Is it okay to have almond milk and cereal during the feast? I haven't seen these ingredients in them.
So I'm just gonna give and just to personalize the question, because I'm vegetarian. So in terms of cereals, I just deal with the cereal. In terms of cereal that does not have those ingredients, they would be permissible for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but I'm just saying for me personally, because I don't know the process, even though stuff is not in the ingredients. When it comes to any processed food, we have to be careful for them overall. So I personally don't eat cereal during that time. But I'm not going to tell anybody that it is wrong to eat cereal during that time. I'm just saying me personally now. Because when it comes to processed foods, and, we try to stay clear from processed foods, and we should do that in general. But, for that 7 days, we try to stay away from processed food and focus on straight food, the ground foods and things like that. I personally stay away from cereal, but I'll have cereal in the house, just to say that as well. I just stay away from eating it because it is processed food, so I just to safeguard myself. Now I would do this. I do the same thing with the almond milk. And actually, I switched to coconut milk. I'll add soy milk, coconut milk, and today oat milk is actually a big thing in the market now as well. So those milks, when you read the ingredients, they would not have any of the ingredients that you would see on your screen now. So they are literally okay for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But I'm just personalizing it. I just tend to stay away from them for those 7 days. I would still keep them in the house. I wouldn't throw it out. I wouldn't go through that process, like I said, and overburden myself for the Feast of Unleavened Bread and throw them out. But I would just personally stay with them for the 7 days, because I'm not privy to the entire process that was used into making it. To give an example, you buy a product, this is for something that you can use any time of the year. You buy a product that does not have peanuts, but then they give you a warning that it was made in the facility with peanuts. So if you have an allergy to peanuts, even though peanuts is not in the ingredients of what you're buying, they're also warning you that it was made in that facility. So if you have a peanut allergy, beware. So I would use that same comparison when it comes to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You may have an item that does not have the ingredients in it, but it may be made in a facility that makes things that are prohibited for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you want to stay away from it for those 7 days, just because you don't want the contraction in it, even though it's not in the ingredients, but it's made in a safe facility, so it can contract something that's prohibited. And if it's something that's easy to avoid, such as cereal, almond milk, and things like that, just avoid it for those 7 days. But at the same time, if you have bought like a bunch of cereal before this time, let's say you have boxes of cereal still in your house, or bag of cereal in this house, or a couple of cartons of almond milk in your fridge, I would not say throw it away for the 7 days. I would just say don't use it, but I wouldn't say throw it away.
I got a question about the different milks, right? Now, milk, a lot of milk is reinforced, even the almond milk, the soybean milk, the all of these milks are reinforced with vitamins, right?
Hmm.
What do you say about the reinforcement of these products with these vitamins? That these vitamins that they're putting in it might be vitamins that some might have yeast in it. What do you say about
Right.
that?
Right. So that's why I'm saying to be careful of all of those processed type of foods, the processed milk, just avoid them for the 7 days. If somebody, so, and that's for the ones you buy in the store. You have people that make their own almond milk. You have people that make their own soy milk. They make it in their homes. If you make it in your house, it's not a problem. That's why when we're teaching our congregation, when we're teaching the laws or the instructions concerning this,
Right.
we focus on removing the list that's on the screen now. But if you make your own products beyond that, you're going to be safe. The problem is because we outsource our food, we have to take the extra precautions. So it's not that those products that we outsource are the problem. It's because we don't control how they make this, or we don't know what they come in contact with when they're making it in those facilities. It's like, to give you out, I gave the comparison with the peanuts. You may not have peanuts in the product that you buy, but it's made in a facility with peanuts. Now, dealing with companies that make or that not produce, companies that sell meat. Israelites in general would stay away from companies that they'll buy chicken from companies that only sell chicken. They won't buy chicken from companies that also butcher and sell pork as a precaution. Not because the chicken is definitely contaminated, but you want to, because we're taught in Torah and Leviticus and Deuteronomy that unclean foods can contaminate our clean foods. So once again, you may buy chicken from a company that serves chicken, turkey, but also sells pork and stuff like that, and they all do it in the same facility. They'll contaminate everything. So that's why, as the precautions are only because we don't control where we buy our food from. So we focus primarily in these 7 days as days that you have to learn to make your own foods.
And also to
Or
add,
should make your own foods.
as far as the milk, I know Eden Soy sold a soy milk that was just purified water
Mm-hmm.
and soybeans.
Right.
They sell it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Purified water and
Correct.
soybeans. They sell it in the carton. If you ever see the Eden Soy cartons of milk, because some people are lactose intolerant, they can't drink cow's milk or whatever it is, and they have to drink these supplements. What I've learned throughout the years is to eat fresh. I mean, it's embedded in me. So I don't, like Chief Benjamin says, it's embedded in us. We don't eat a lot of, we try not to eat any processed foods during this time. And what we do with our cereal will be things like, what do you call it, oatmeal.
Right.
During this time, when we were really young, we were like drastic, like raw honey. I mean, those are things that we did. The paste honey. I mean, we don't go through that now because we've learned more and we've gotten more understanding of Torah. But we used to do raw honey. We used to eat the rolled oats, right? Or the what do you call it? The quick oats, which is the same thing, is just broken up to smaller particles, and we just pour the milk on top of it and pour some honey and eat it like a cereal. Those are things we used to do. We used to take the plantains and grater it and make a porridge out of it, with some milk and you put a little bit of sugar and cinnamon. These are all different things that we used to do in order to make it happen during this time. How about tofu? How about all of the vegetable the meat substitutes during this time, Chief?
Right.
since you're a
Yes,
vegetarian?
yes. For tofu, like I've been, yeah, I stopped all those soy products, period. But definitely, just to package that in the processed food conversation. Stay away from that for the 7 days because the ingredients may not have it, but you want to avoid as much processed food as possible during the season. But that's what we would suggest. You avoid as much processed food as possible during the season. Um, if you keep it in your house, that's fine, but avoid eating it during this time, during the 7 days. And just to reiterate, and because continue to reiterate, the lists on the screen, those are definitely things you have to get rid of. But with anything else, when it comes to other processed foods, you just avoid using it. But we don't teach that you have to get rid of it because the only thing that we have to get rid of is leavened bread or get rid of comics.
The next question, because I want to get everything out because I know you say you want to make the video as short as possible because people are not going to want to look at it, but people do look at
and
it.
they might see an icon with a 3 hour video and decide not to watch it. So.
All right, but it's okay. I think people.
Yeah, I'm not saying
people,
I mean, the people that are here and the people that want to learn it.
right.
And like I said before, we all, in this learning process, the people that want it, even like with the question with the Messiah, like people are here, they want to learn, and that's what we all, together. We want to learn together. It's just that we want to, at the same time, condense certain information. We only have a couple of days, so somebody may not have 2 hours to sit down and watch something as also. So we're just being mindful of those that are not watching now that want to go back and reference something. So, I mean, we could continue the conversation going. I'm just saying that for those going back, they might see a video that's long.
But I think what tends to happen when it comes to these seasons, people are so hungry to hear it. And I could always edit it to a point.
Right.
Whereas to just getting specifically to the points, that's not a problem,
Yeah.
and kind of eliminate all the conversation, the extra conversation. But just a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
Brown rice versus white rice.
I personally don't. Well, I know that. Okay. Naturally, rice is not white, so that's white rice is
It's bleached.
It's bleached, it's stripped of its minerals.
Right.
And sometimes they strip it of the minerals and then put back the minerals into it.
Right.
So now, with rice overall, you want to stick with, and not just because it's brown rice is good, you want to stick with your whole grain rice. Rice that is not enriched.
Right.
That's what you want to eat during the time. And you can find the same thing with the flour that you buy.
Right.
You want to make sure, none of that all-purpose flour. Throw those things out.
Right.
And just get, your 100% whole wheat flours.
Right.
If you can get it or you have access to it, as it was mentioned, I think one of the questions, organic products is, our congregation doesn't necessarily stress organic as there are many members that utilize primarily organic products, but as a congregation, we don't stress that. But this is the time of year where if you can do it, get the organic products in terms of rice, flour, things. You want to get things in their most natural state during the season. Those are the things that we want to stress.
To add, if you're gonna get white rice, because I know some of you don't like the taste of brown rice because you haven't been used to it. They do have white rice that is not enriched. It's white. Obviously, it's stripped of all its vitamins and everything, but they do have white rice that is not enriched. You just have to look for it, right? They have it, right? So just something for you to you actually have to read ingredients, and also there is white flour that is not enriched. You just have to read ingredients and look for it, right? And that's all I could tell you. They got white wheat flour that is not enriched. It's bleached. I guess it's bleached, but it's not enriched.
Enriched, right?
Yeah, it's not enriched. They do sell it, and those are perfectly fine because you're not adding anything to it. So they just extracted whatever vitamins and nutrients that it had.
But I would say overall, as the children, I guess as the children of Israel, or as servants of God, period, that not just for these 7 days, but in general, we want to
Eat is
focus
healthy.
on eating food in its natural state as possible. Because even with this stuff, the way they start stripping the minerals from it on the processed food that they um, sell that we buy, it does actual long-term harm to our body.
Right.
So even like with the pandemic that's happening right now, so they're saying that one of the things that are being said, of course, there's information that changes every hour. But one of the things that's being said is our immune systems have become weakened because we eat processed foods.
Mm.
I mean, that's something that has been said in general, but I've noticed that, and not to spend too much time on the pandemic conversation, just to follow my own rule in terms of keeping the subject on one thing. But there are a lot of medical professionals, whether it's doctors, et cetera, that are actually encouraging. You're not seeing it in the press conferences by the government, by the president and governors, but you're seeing doctors and other medical professionals telling people, because of what's happening now, that the best way to strengthen your immune system is to stay away from processed foods and to go back to taking the things. I see doctors mentioning garlic, ginger, and turmeric a lot right now, because nobody's going to come out and say it's a cure for the disease, but doctors are just throwing it out there as hints because, of course, they have to protect their own profession, and of course, media is not promoting that. But I see a lot of doctors talking about garlic, ginger, and turmeric during this pandemic right now, because those are things. Those are they're number one. They're antiviral agents, and they also boost the immune system. They are also antioxidants. And for again, not to belabor this point, but if you look at what an antioxidant does, it does a lot of the things that our bodies need to fight off diseases. So you'll see that happening a lot right now. So in general, just year round, we want to, as we're coming into this, or we've already been into this way of life, we want to get into eating food in its most natural state as possible.
Hallelujah. So once again, as you have it there, read your vitamins, like Chief said, especially during this time. It's very important to have your vitamin C's and your turmeric, and just read the ingredients. Make sure they don't have any of the ingredients that he has up there posted, and those are perfectly fine for you to consume to keep your health. There are a lot of people who are on medications. Those are things that always come up. We're trying to cover everything, Chief, so
Yeah.
that we don't leave no stone unturned. For
Right.
I knew people in the past that were on medication and they will come off for the 7 days. Now, we're not doctors. We don't advise you to, we don't tell you what to do. That is a decision you have to make between you and your God. And I'm sure that Chief Benjamin would agree with me when it comes to that.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
was keen, just overall, and we spoke about it earlier. There is a difference between medication and vitamins.
right,
Now, you don't need vitamins.
right,
Vitamins are supplements to your diet.
right,
So there are vitamins that have yeast in it. There are not many vitamins. I mean, not many medications that have yeast in it. So once again, there's a difference between the medications and your vitamins. You still have to look up the ingredients of your medications anyway, all year round, because some of them may have pork or fat or different things that we're not supposed to consume. Period. So you want to look that up and get alternatives. And they don't necessarily have to be a natural alternative to that medicine, but there are some medications that are alternatives that don't have yeast. I mean, well, there's not too many medications that have, because yeast is not good for the body anyway, so that's why medications usually do not contain yeast. But now vitamins are a supplement to your diet, so that's why you'll find yeast in vitamins. But, just once again, whether it's your medications or whether it's your vitamins, you want to read the read the ingredients to make sure it doesn't contain yeast or any of the limited agents that's posted on the screen. Sometimes you buy medication, of course, the ingredients is not on it, but that's why you have to open that packet and unfold it and just, redo it. Or you can go online and type in the medication that you've been prescribed, and there should be a list of ingredients there. And then you could also ask it if it does contain something that you cannot eat, especially like pork and fat and stuff like that. You just ask your doctor for an alternative to that same medicine. It's like, like people that take blood thinners, there are different types of blood thinners, medications. So you might have some blood thinners that contain pork in it, and then you have some that don't. So that's why those that are on blood thinners, they do the research, and they'll have their doctor prescribe the one that doesn't have pork. Or you could just say in general, if you speak to your doctor, they'll understand the term kosher, so you'll ask your doctor to prescribe kosher medications. But that's just a subject for just all year round. But, for this particular topic, you definitely want to scrutinize your vitamins. You can even not take vitamins for 7 days because, once again, vitamins are a supplement. There's a difference between vitamins, once again, and medication. Medication is something that you actually need to fight off an ailment that you may have. The vitamins just basically supplement your diet to give your body a boost of the nutrients that it's not getting from the foods that you're supposed to be eating. But that comes as a result of eating processed foods or eating foods that will strip of the nutrients, and that's why we end up relying on vitamins. But if we just ate food in its most natural state, we would get all the vitamins that we need.
And this is what I mean about vitamins. You have vitamins that are put in capsules that basically are powdered versions, like turmeric. It might just be powdered turmeric, just turmeric by itself with nothing else. The only thing you have to be careful with when a lot of times when it comes with vitamins is the capsules that they're put in. You have to make sure you get a vegetable source. And this is for just future reference for people that might not know this. When you get vitamins, you have to make sure that you have vitamins with vegetable capsules, with veggie capsules, right? Not make sure that they don't have the gelatin capsules, because those come from the pig. And a lot of vitamins tend to come from that. So read your vitamins before you buy them. Don't just think you're buying vitamins and that's it. A lot of the capsules that they're using are either from the pork, so it has to be specifically has to say vegetable capsules, right? There are line of vitamins, I believe, from Solgar, whatever you call it. I think they're vegetarian. You got to look for it where it says vegetarian source and still read the back and make sure that it has veggie capsules. So those are preventions that we can have. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, because vitamins, they'll have pork, they'll have shellfish, they'll have a lot of things that we're not allowed to eat. So, yeah, it's important to, and this is for year round, once again. It's important for us to read ingredients. We'll encourage Chief Uziel to do a lesson on, I know he's going to be teaching
in 2 weeks
dietary law, but we'll encourage him to, as he encouraged me, to do a live stream. We'll encourage him to do a live stream on Yom Rishon or someday during the week where we could all discuss dietary law in general.
Right.
Because that's something that all of us need to come to a consensus as a community. That many of us have information. We just have to piece things together. And this is once again talking about the Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14. Many of us have information that we need to share amongst each other, because we may have something that other people don't know. Other people may know stuff that we don't know. It's like when we found out about the domino sugars years ago. Other people knew about that, but we didn't know about it.
Right.
So it's things like that. So we need to definitely have some sort of forum or some sort of discussion where we can share the information on foods that we can and cannot eat year round.
Right. Nothing, Marsha Yisrael, nothing wrong with sesame seed. Canned food, definitely stay away with tuna. As a whole, we don't mess with it as a congregation, because we don't know where, there's a lot of things about tuna that some have scale, some don't. So as a precaution, when in doubt, we do without, and we don't mess with tuna. We do eat canned salmon, some of us, but during this time, we don't tend to mess with canned fish. So just letting everybody know. Sesame seed is perfect. I mean, I don't see what will be. Would you see anything wrong with sesame seed?
No.
Rabbi?
It's a naturally occurring seed. But I think how you mentioned, like with supplements that are made from natural stuff, like when you brought the turmeric,
Right.
you still want to read the ingredients on how they process it to give it to you in the form that you're getting. But if it's just the grain itself or the seed itself,
Right.
then it's okay.
Yeah, you have things like flaxseed. If you buy, we know it from the Caribbean as linseed. We know it here as flaxseed. You could buy that. You could buy your sea moss. That's perfectly fine for during this time. Isinglass, and this is why we need to have this conversation on another time, because the whole thing with isinglass and some people call sea moss isinglass. Now, isinglass is totally different than sea moss. Isinglass is an ingredient that they add to the sea moss. Oh, sea moss is something that they add to isinglass. Isinglass comes from an unclean fish. We cannot consume isinglass. So when you go to these Caribbean stores and they're selling sea moss, you need to ask them if they added isinglass to that. Because isinglass is an unclean ingredient. It comes from an unclean fish. But that's another story for another day. So thank you, Rabbi, for joining us, for making it clear so that everyone would know. And I hope that everyone will be able to take this and process it and be able and that this was of some help for you. I'm going to put the PDF with the list of things so that you could download it and have it and print it and walk around with it, so that when you go shopping, you could you won't be confused. So look out for it. Once the stream is done, there's going to be a link for it. You could download it and you should be good to go with that. I like to give glory to the Creator of heaven and earth, and I'll ask everyone to please pray for my cousin Edna Esterine. Let me write it down. Edna Esterine. She was taken to the hospital on Friday, and it seems like she has the virus. She couldn't breathe, and she does have some underlying conditions. So us and the family over here are a bit worried. So her name is Edna Esterine. Please pray for her, and I pray that the Most High God has mercy on her and helps her to push through, because we can't get any information after she was taken to the hospital. We can't get any information on her. So we pray that she gets through on the other side of this thing. Chief, do you want to say anything in conclusion?
Yes. Once again, also thanking Yehovah our God for the opportunity to have this forum and everybody that participated today, and hoping that the information that we gave does not lead anybody astray, and we ourselves will not led astray in any way, and that His presence was with us when we were having discussions, so that He would teach us the truth of His word, and also adding to that especially during this time with what's happening in the world, that our people and our families are protected. Even if we end up becoming sick, that He would heal us. We ask overall that He would protect us and give us peace, peace in our minds and peace in our bodies. And also with the season of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread that is to come, that He would teach us how to observe it in a joyous and a fun manner that is in accordance to His word, so that we would not anger Him in any way, but we would not put any stress or any strains on ourselves that would cause us to add or to take away from His word. And if anybody, has any further questions, I know that the video will still be available, and the live chat won't be there, but you can always put questions in the comments of the video. Chief Uziel can give you the phone number for the congregation as well as the email address, and we will get back to anybody that has any questions, and also any suggestions for any other discussions. One thing that me and Chief Uziel was speaking about lately is utilizing this time of being forced, so to speak. I mean, we both of us are still working, but we're utilizing this time of not being able to do other things and being, the distractions being taken away to do things like this. So we're going to, as much as possible, come up with subjects and topics that we can discuss. So just send us the topics, not just questions, but any topics that you would like for us to discuss, so that we can continue. So we don't want to make this just something that is done on Shabbat. We have to learn how to function as a community throughout the week, to where we can have broader discussions and broader activity. Being that the Sabbath day prohibits us from many things. So we just ask that people would help us with topics, subjects that we can discuss to help all of our communities grow. And definitely, we want to get back, into the conversation with the Messianic conversation. I don't know if the person is still in the chat, if you're listening. That
no, the person left already.
We can get the information to them, or they can get information to us, so we can have some sort of forum. But once again, whether it's that discussion or any discussion, we want to, we're open for that right now, and we're just praying that the Creator of the universe, blesses the works of our hands, the thoughts of our minds, not just those whose voices you heard, but those that are in the chat as well. That, your voices are definitely important, and your statements, your comments are definitely important. We're all important in the sight of the Most High, because we all are special people to Him. So we ask that He would protect us, protect our families, and give us peace.
Hallelujah. So, she says she's there. So you could contact us. You could leave us an email at info@beitdcb.org. info@beitdcb.org. Let me write it down. Or you could contact us via phone. info@beitdc. Let me just write it at DCB. .org. Infobait, or call, or leave your topic. Call 347-622-9090. You could call or just text. A text sometimes is good, because every time the phone cannot be picked up. But if it's something important, you could give us a call. But that's the way you could get in contact with us right there. For those who have topics, hopefully we could get Chief Benjamin up here more than once a week to do some more topics, since he already committed himself to doing this. We get him active again. So thank you to everyone. So what's the sister? Atia Yashara. Yes, that's the way that you could send in for your topic. You could text us, or you could email us topics, so that we could come back and we could discuss them later in the week. We could put something together so that everyone could understand. So thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, for all of you joining us, and for all of you being here with us. I thank once again my brother, Rabbi Chief Benjamin, for taking the time out to be here with us and giving us 2 hours and almost 30 minutes of discussing of his time, and to be able to enlighten God's people. I pray that we all stay safe out there, that the Most High God will keep all plagues away from us, all diseases away from us, and that He will strengthen us. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, right? And share it to all your different platforms. Don't forget, when you see this chat right here that we're having, I want you to take some of your questions, copy some of the questions that you have in this chat here, and then paste them. I want you to paste them to not the chat, but to the actual comment board on the video. I want everybody here to do me that favor, because a lot of times when people go into the video, they don't see any of the questions that you had, right? And so it just seems like the video was just up there and no one ever commented on it, because they don't get to see the super chat, or they don't get to see the chat, right? So go to the actual video, and underneath it is going to say comment, right? And I want you to paste some of these questions to some of the comments that you have on the video there, so that when people tune in and they look at it, they could see that it was actually a video with content and that it was interesting. I hope that everybody understands what I'm saying. So try to do that right now, so that the video will get more, people will come to see the video more, because this is an important topic for all Israel. So once again, I thank everyone. Also, if you would like to donate, you can hit the super chat button, which is the money sign symbol at the bottom of the stream. Thank you to I believe the brother name was Zev, who donated earlier. No, let me make sure. No, AZ Yisrael. Thank you for your donation. And anybody else that would like to donate, you could do that by hitting that super chat button. So once again, Toda Rabah, may the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob bless each and every one of you. Shalom, shalom, and may everyone have a blessed week. Hallelujah.